And joining us now to discuss the latest in Minneapolis and tensions over immigration enforcement is our panel, Mike Leon, host of the podcast Can We Please Talk, and Director of Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation, as well as Brian Leib, a political strategist and the CEO of Henry Public Relations. Good to have you both here with us. Start with you, Mike. We've just heard now Vice President JD Vance heading to Minneapolis today for a roundtable discussion, trying to bring down the heat on the ICE issues there. What do you expect from these talks today?
Yeah, good to see everybody, first and foremost. You know, Steph, I'm going to echo two things that JD Vance said there in the package I played before we hopped on that was kind of contradictory to each other. He said, you know, I hope to bring down the tensions, and then in the next breath said something with respect to the way the Democratic lawmakers are kind of handling this, or at least the way people are protesting some of the enforcement actions, right? People are allowed to peacefully protest. That's part of living here in the United States in terms of assembly and peacefully protesting. Maybe not the way the church protest was done, obviously, but they are allowed to peacefully protest about this. And if JD Vance truly wants to have cooler heads prevail and bring down the tensions, what he should be doing when he goes to Minneapolis is actually meeting with Mayor Frey, with Governor Walz, talking to local leaders, doing a joint press conference that talks about how we're going to allow ICE to run their operations, follow the law that they're supposed to follow, right, with respect to judicial warrants versus administrative warrants, follow the law there, and then the way the state and local municipalities are going to help with respect to that, and still allow people their right to peacefully protest. If he truly wants to do that, Steph, if he truly wants to accomplish what he said in the first thing in terms of calming down the tensions, he would be doing all of that. Unfortunately, we're not going to see any of that today. I don't believe we're going to see a joint press conference from him and Mayor Frey and Governor Walz, because I don't think people truly want the cooler heads to prevail. But that's the way they should be going about this. That's what his mission should be when he goes over to Minneapolis later today.
Brian, your response.
I think it's a great idea to have bipartisanship and to have Democrats and Republicans working together, but it does take two to tango. And I think, you know, unfortunately, the rhetoric on both sides has really been not very good. So I think, you know, JD Vance, the vice president, showing up there today, I think is a good step. And, you know, we'll see if there's, you know, opportunities, you know, for him to meet with some of the local lawmakers. But I also don't think that any of the local lawmakers would have any interest in meeting with him. I mean, they've had pretty choice words about the vice president, about the president, and about Republicans as a whole. So, you know, I'm not sure how this is going to unfold, but I do think it's important that the vice president's going there today and meeting with local officials, local community leaders, and we'll see what comes of it.
And let's look at the feeling right now in the country about the ICE enforcement. Polling shows Trump's approval on immigration has slipped. A new Reuters Ipsos survey finds that approval is at about 40% on this particular issue. Mike, what do you think is the core reason behind this?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, Steph, I live in Florida, as you know. I live in Miami, right? So we have this is the gateway to Latin America, right? This is probably people's first stops when they do come into this country because they have family that lives here. We have, you know, Colombians, Venezuelans, Cubans, Haitians, some that have been affected by TPS status that has been revoked. We have a bunch of issues in this community, but we are seen as that gateway city, right? So immigration is truly front and center in this state and where I'm living. And what I hear from people all the time is, we're not rounding up the bad hombres that President Trump said in his speech. And if we were, and again, I'm using DHS's numbers. If you just look at what Church McLaughlin and what DHS released recently in terms of the self-deportation numbers and then December's numbers at the end of the fiscal year, with respect to how many were actually hardened criminals with a criminal record, I think it was about 7,000 out of 626,000 or so that they released numbers-wise. I mean, that's 0.011%. So there's the feeling in the, I can only go for the Spanish community because obviously I'm Hispanic, but there's a feeling in the community of we'd be on board with some of this if we were actually targeting and these operations were done and designed to target those type of people. But when we see videos and stories come out, the recent one with the 5-year-old boy who was kind of used in terms of knocking on the door to see if there was any other relatives in, I think people don't understand that it used to be a civil offense, now it's a criminal offense. So obviously it's now become a criminal to be in this country illegally, but it's the way we're targeting these things. It's the way we're going about these things. It's the execution of these operations that's the sentiment behind all of this. And that's why you see the numbers dip around that.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because the issue of the support for Trump on this issue had been for more broadly illegal immigration rather than specifically hardened criminals, although the administration has been speaking out more about their efforts there. But Brian, your sense of what the core issue is here?
The core issue is that we have borders as a country. We have laws that should be followed for individuals that want to immigrate to this great country. We are most certainly a melting pot, the United States of America, and we welcome people from all around the world, but it has to be done right. And I think when you speak with immigrant communities all throughout this country, I have yet to find an immigrant community that doesn't subscribe to that theory about coming here legally is the right way to do it. So, it is a federal criminal offense to enter this country illegally and to stay here illegally. That is an illegal immigrant. I'm sorry, if those words offend certain people, but that is what it is. If you come here illegally, you are residing in this country illegally, and you should be deported. So I don't really think that this is an issue that really should be so controversial. I think, that's what I think.
All right, Mike, your chance to respond, and also in thinking about how both Democrats and Republicans could approach this issue as the midterms approach.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll piggyback just something on Brian said there. He's right. Like, terminology-wise, Democrats got to stop getting offended about the terminology. Again, drive out more voter support. 91 million people didn't participate in the elections. If you had said and ran campaign ads that said this is what's going to happen, ICE is going to come to your front door, and now it's going to be a criminal in nature to be here illegally versus a civil offense like it used to be under previous administrations, yeah, maybe they would have gotten some more voters to turn out, and maybe Donald Trump wouldn't be president. But to Brian's point, he is, and this is what they've instituted. In terms of carrying this out message-wise on the midterms, I've had folks that are running for Congress in certain districts. I've had Democratic lawmakers on my show talking about this. No Democrat that I can find anywhere is wearing the, we support criminals t-shirts, for lack of a better joke, Steph. It's about the way we're going about executing this. And I think it speaks to the larger of what I was mentioning before with JD Vance. If we truly want the cooler heads to prevail, Brian mentioned that I'm not sure there's any Minnesota lawmakers that would want to meet with JD Vance. I agree with that, but there's a reason why, because he gave a press conference right after the killing of Renee Good when he didn't have to do any of that. What we need to start doing is stop with the rhetoric, stop with the buzzwords, come together and figure out how do we enforce the laws that are currently on the books? How do we get ICE to actually follow the laws that are on the books when it comes to little things like administrative versus judicial warrants? And then how do we get people to, within their rights, peacefully protest the actions that are happening with ICE? With respect to the enforcement part of it, it's not a crime to voice your opinion vociferously with a megaphone and then get shot in the face with a spray of pepper spray or things like that. Like, that's not a crime. We shouldn't be treating that as such. You should be allowed to do that, as we're seeing here in the B-roll that's playing as I'm talking. So I think there has to be somebody that can come in. Hopefully JD Vance does that today. Again, I'm very skeptical that that'll happen, but hopefully Tim Walz does the same thing, and Jacob Fry. They come out together and they say, look, this is the plan of action that we're going to go about to doing this, so we can set the precedent for the future. Because I hate to break it to everybody, but Donald Trump is in year one. He just completed year one of a 4-year term. So we've got a long road to go, and we're going to see more of this, and we're never going to see cooler heads prevail if we don't actually have the two sides come together and work together.
Certainly. What will that take, Brian?
Going into the midterms, I think that immigration is certainly going to be an important issue, but I want to pivot a little bit here and talk more about what we keep hearing about affordability. I mean, affordability really is an issue that's affecting all Americans right now, and costs continue to rise, rent continues to rise, wages are really not rising too much. So I think going into the midterms, there's going to be a lot of things that the American people have on their plate and what they're deciding. Immigration certainly is going to be an issue. Affordability is going to be an issue. Crime is going to be an issue. Foreign policy is also likely going to be an issue. So there's a lot of things that the American people are going to be faced with in choosing, who they're going to either reelect or kick out of office when the midterms approach. And we'll see how all these factors, wind up coming together. And I want to echo what my co-panelists said. I mean, I really think it would be nice, for all of us to find some common ground with regards to the immigration issue. Again, there's no issue with legal immigration. You're not going to find any Republicans that have, any issues with people coming from all around the world to this country, legally, that want to, come here, build a family here, build a life here. But it does have to be done the right way. And unfortunately, the system has been abused for way too long. And also, let's be honest, the system is totally broken. And these things need to be revised and fixed. But would be nice to bring the temperature down a little bit here. I don't know if we're capable of doing that in today's world with politics. But I do think the average American, supports immigrating here legally and doing it the right way, and that's something I think we should all be striving for.
And we'll be watching what comes of today's meeting, JD Vance, with local community leaders. Thank you so much for your time today, Mike Leon, Brian Leib. Good to have you both with us.
Thank you,
Steph.